Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. With a growing number of tourists coming to the Yukon, especially the city of Whitehorse, long-term hotel rentals are scarce, and people in need of housing are in a less than ideal situation. With the city's housing crisis at an all-time high, advocates are now pushing for alternative housing solutions. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
Summer tourism is in full swing in Whitehorse, and hotels are making room by emptying themselves of their long-term winter guests. But those guests, often homeless and living on social assistance, have nowhere to go.
These are just really unprecedented times.
Asia Mason is the executive director of the Yukon Status of Women Council. Her organization, along with many others, is asking Whitehorse City Council for help. Last week, they sent a letter asking Council to amend a bylaw allowing for homeless people to camp in areas around the city, including an arena and church parking lots. With short-term housing options in short supply and 200 people on a by-name list, double the number of last year, she says it's time for alternative solutions.
The urgency of the situation, we've just never been in a situation like this where we've seen the number of homeless people double in less than 12 months.
Camping won't fix the problem, but it will help. Recent mudslides have made it unsafe to camp at the city's clay cliffs. While the Whitehorse Emergency Shelter is an option, Mason says it's not ideal for women and children.
There's a lot of violence that happens in the shelter, and it is, it's often it's often a place that's the last place people want to go to.
City Council says it's looking into the issue. Mason warns if the problem's not addressed, vulnerable people will suffer.
And that shouldn't be happening in one of the most prosperous places in the world.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Pope Francis has been forced to cancel his planned July trip to Congo and South Sudan because of ongoing knee problems. But there's no word yet on the status of the Pope's visit to Canada later next month. The Vatican this morning confirming the African trip has been postponed under doctor's orders. No new date has been set. The Pope is undergoing therapy for his right knee and has been using a wheelchair for about a month. Pope Francis is scheduled to visit Canada July 24th to the 29th to meet with residential school survivors. Plans are underway to build a nearly $3 billion hospital in the city of Ottawa, but not everybody is on board, including a coalition of Indigenous groups who say they were not properly consulted on the new site. Here's APTN's Fraser Needham with a preview of that story.
Ottawa's old civic hospital is in disrepair and needs to close. So the wheels are in motion to build a new hospital at the site across the street. This site is also known as the Experimental Farm. It's about 1,000 acres of crown land filled with trees and greenery. And not everyone's happy about the hospital going here because of what it will do to existing green space. More on this story to come. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
We always want to hear what you have to say about anything you've seen here. Here's how to continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website. That's aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. It's another bad year for salmon fishing in the Yukon. Recreational and commercial fishing for Chinook and chum salmon is closed. Earlier this week, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans announced Chinook and chum fishing will be closed on the Canadian side of the Yukon River. For years, the number of spawning Chinook salmon have been in decline. More recently, chum numbers have also been low. Chinook salmon in particular are a traditional food valued by First Nations people in the Yukon. Many First Nations have voluntarily closed Chinook harvesting to conserve numbers.
Everybody's disappointed with the preseason forecast for sure, but we're hopeful that this is a period of low productivity that we're going to get out of so long as everybody does their part and agrees not to fish, and we can collectively get as many fish on the spawning grounds as possible.
And now to Iqaluit, where we're checking in on a story that, after 10 long years, is finally coming to a proper solution with proper Inuktitut spelling.
I'm Ken Driscoll, here in Iqaluit. That building? That's the Kamotik building. The Inuktitut name on this building has been misspelled for a decade. It was just fixed this week. That's a hassle because this building is located in the middle of the territorial capital. It's a bigger hassle for Nunavut's language commissioner. The language commissioner's office is located in a building that had misspelled Inuktitut. Now it's fixed. We'll sit down with the language commissioner to find out just what is in a name. That's coming soon, here on APTN National News.
I'm Charlotte Morit-Jacobs. Coming up soon on APTN National News, we'll meet Indigenous graduates of Aurora College's Early Childhood Education Program.
What are you going to draw, Joshua?
And gain perspective on what they want to see with the $10 a day federal childcare subsidy.
It's a really good idea, but then I think about the buildings, like where is this going to take place for like children to come in for $10 a day?
That's coming up soon on APTN National News.
Welcome back. Testimony has wrapped up at a Police Services Act hearing for 2 Thunder Bay police officers facing charges of neglect of duty and discreditable conduct. The charges are related to the officers' handling of the investigation into the 2015 death of Stacey DeBungy. Closing submissions will take place next week. For more, we're joined by TV Newswatch reporter Doug Dyzik, who has been covering the hearings. Doug, thanks so much for taking some time for us. Can you briefly remind our viewers what happened to Stacey DeBungy and how we got to this Police Act hearing?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dennis. Well, this Police Act hearing is basically 7 years in the making. It stems from October 19th, 2015, when a passerby notified the Thunder Bay Police Service that there was a body in the McIntyre River. The police responded, set up a scene, obviously, and then where the Police Service Act hearing comes into play is the family of Brad DeBungy and Rainy River First Nation, his home community, started to raise questions about how the investigation was being handled by the Thunder Bay Police Service, and that ultimately resulted in Police Service Act charges for 2 of the officers involved.
We heard over the past 2 weeks from Stacey's brother, Brad, the private investigator that the family had hired, the officers facing the charges and others. What stood out for you during the first 2 weeks of testimony?
Well, in the early stages, I think the testimony from former Rainy River First Nation Chief Jim Leonard, as well as Stacey's brother Brad, really sort of set the tone for what they were experiencing at the time. Chief Leonard described it as, a really gut-wrenching experience for the family and for the community. And for Brad DeBungy, he went into more detail about his experiences with the police, wanting to get answers about what happened to his brother, and he felt that his questions and his inquiries were sort of brushed off by the police. As a result of that, the DeBungy family actually hired a private investigator out of Toronto, David Perry, and he testified as well. And he was in the city of Thunder Bay and conducted an investigation for 3 days, and he uncovered certain leads that would, sort of open the door for this to be a suspicious death. And then there was also testimony, obviously, from the 2 officers, Staff Sergeant Sean Harrison and Detective Sean Whipple. Harrison has already pleaded guilty to the charge of neglect of duty, but he pleaded not guilty to the other charge of discreditable conduct, and Whipple, who was charged with the same offenses under the Police Services Act, has pleaded guilty to both charges. And the reason Harrison pleaded guilty to the neglect of duty charge is because in November, Brad Mungie and the private investigator, Dave Perry, attended the Thunder Bay Police Service headquarters and requested to meet with Harrison so Perry could share some of the new information he had uncovered. One of the most pressing details was that Stacey DeBungie's debit card had been used after his death. Mm-hmm. But Harrison did not take that meeting, and he met with Brad separately a couple weeks later and learned that the DeBungie family had hired a private investigator, but he still didn't follow up with that investigator. And he admitted in his testimony that that was a mistake on his part and constitutes neglect of duty.
This testimony has wrapped up. Things will pick up, though, next week. What more can we expect?
The next stages will be closing submission on the part of all counsel, and then the adjudicator, retired Ontario Provincial Police Officer Greg Walton, will come down with his decision. It's just interesting to note as well that the DeBungie case was really sort of the jumping off point for the Office of the Independent Police Review Director's investigation into the Thunder Bay Police Service that found systemic racism at the institutional level. Mm-hmm. And during testimony, both Harrison and Whipple were asked if they had read that report, and both of them said they had not. They agreed that there are issues at the sort of at the institutional level. There are systemic issues. They just don't know specifically what those refer to. And there was an interesting point where prosecutor Joel Dubois had said that if you read those reports, you would know what some of those examples are. But Harrison and Whipple were also asked several times by their defense counsel, David Butt, about or if racial bias plays any kind of role in the investigations that they do. And they testified that it never has for them. And they even take great pride in the work that they do for the Thunder Bay Police Service and working with the Indigenous community.
An important case for sure. I won't press you on this, but I found it interesting watching myself that the adjudicator hadn't read the broken trust report until after the first week either. Doug, we'll all be watching, of course, next week. Appreciate you taking some time for us.
Okay, thank you very much for having me, Dennis.
And last October, the OPP announced it was taking over the investigation into the death of Stacey DeBungie. Time for another quick break. Coming up, we're going to hit the catwalk in Kitigan-Zigi. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Toby Wilson sent in this photo from a recent fishing trip at Molson Lake, located in northern Manitoba. Toby says, look closely and you'll see very old rock paintings that are around, found along the rock formation. Keep those photos coming by emailing your photo to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at your Saturday weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 25 in Halifax, 19 with rain in St. John's. +8 and showers in Kuujjuaq, 19 in Inukjuak. 23 with rain in Montreal, 18 and showers in Chibougamau. 21 with rain for Sault Ste. Marie, sun's out, and 23 in North Bay. 23 for Thunder Bay, 1 degree cooler in Sioux Lookout. 20 in God's Lake and Thompson, 24 for Norway House. 26 in Winnipeg, showers, and 24 in Dauphin. Rain and 24 for Regina, 22 with showers for Saskatoon. 23 and rain for La Ronge, 22 with showers in Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, 21 with rain in High Level, Peace River, and Grand Prairie. Showers and 22 for Edmonton, rain and 24 in Lethbridge. 20 for Vancouver, 25 with rain in Kamloops. 16 and showers for Prince George, 21 in Fort Nelson. +5 in Old Crow, 17 in Whitehorse. 21 in Yellowknife, cloudy, and 17 for Norman Wells. 7 for Saxe Harbor and Paulatuck. 15 in Chesterfield and Baker Lake.
-2 with snow in Resolute, 11 for Iqaluit.
The Kiawastan Student Centre at MacEwan University in Edmonton hosted an outdoor Indigenous market today. Attendees had the opportunity to meet and chat directly with artists from across Alberta. The event offered traditional arts and crafts for sale and musical entertainment. It was an opportunity for experienced and up-and-coming artists to showcase their works, including jewelry, clothing, beadwork, and handmade art.
A lot of my inspiration comes from nature and just growing up on the reserve, and I think I really want to depict the representation of how beautiful it can be, because a lot of people do see the negative effects of it and everything, and my experience is totally different because I come from a very traditional family my grandpa's a Sundance maker and my grandma's a medicine woman, so I grew up kind of in the traditional lifestyle, and so it's important to me to kind of show that to the world.
And for the first time, Indigenous fashion designers are being featured at an Atlantic Art Symposium in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Angel Moore has a preview for us.
I'm here at the Beaverbank Art Gallery in Fredericton, New Brunswick, at the site of this evening's Indigenous Designers Fashion Show, part of the Bedagan Art Symposium. Inside the art gallery, a makeshift hair and makeup room, Sogwane Wenasquan of the Escanobadich First Nation is showing her designs for the first time, modernizes traditional culture such as birch bark into wearable fashion.
So this is my main piece. It's a mixture of fur and lace and florals, and the top is birch bark. And I got inspired from just a lot of our own traditional, how we worked with birch bark and canoes and a lot of our bags and traditional jewelry and stuff.
Ingrid Brooks of the Indian Island First Nation, an internationally known designer, began sewing regalia for the last 20 years.
My friend had sent me a link to the Toronto Fashion Show, and she said, "You should try out for this." I said, I never really thought of myself as a fashion designer.
Wenasquan is not new to the fashion world. Modeled in New York, Paris, she was inspired to design her own fashion line, hopes to inspire youth.
Just do it. If you have an idea, just do it. It's better you trying something that you've never done before than just it being a memory that you should have did it and you didn't do it.
6 Indigenous designers will showcase their designs tonight. Join me later for the full story on APTN. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Fredericton, New Brunswick.
Thanks, Angel. Some Algonquin High School students in Kitigan-Zibi, Quebec, strutted their stuff on the catwalk for everyone to see this week. It was an opportunity to show off some fashion designs with new talents and a special announcement. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
The show kicked off with a Kukum scarf display. They were joined by Maya Baudre, the 11-year-old entrepreneur and creator of Kukum scrunchies. There was beadwork, bow ties, and trendy dresses. And one of the highlights, T-shirts with a logo designed as a tribute to missing and murdered Indigenous women, including 2 of their own.
And let us not forget Maisie Ojic and Shannon, who have been missing since 2008 from Kitigan-Zibi. They were 16 years old when they were taken.
Amongst the crowd are members of the I Love First Peoples, a group of advocates whose projects promote education and reconciliation. They've just donated 20 high-end sewing machines. It's part of the Sew and Sew initiative that began in 2019. According to Jose Lozignan, there's other sewing labs in northern communities across the country.
We're also partnering with some major fashion brands, so PVH, which is the parent company of Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, as well as the American Eagle Foundation and Mona Gratitude. And this is important because the people behind these brands They know about the students, and they're very eager to help them access opportunities in the fashion industry.
Teacher Kelly Dybel is proud of the students' work. She said it took a lot of effort to complete the sewing project thanks to the pandemic. She says the new machines will be appreciated.
So the new sewing machines that we're getting, some of them are even able to sew leather. And so what I'm being told is that the students will be able to sew the leather mitts and moccasins and things like that using the sewing machine, which will make it a little bit more easier for them instead of sewing with their fingers by hand, which they have done moccasins, and they've also done mittens. So that takes a while, and the students, they get tired of jabbing themselves. So I think they'll be really excited to use the sewing machine to sew the leather.
It was the first fashion show Maxie Maness has participated in. He says it was fun. He'd do it again. And he says the new machines will be helpful.
I was making a ribbon shirt myself, and although I didn't get to complete it because we didn't have that much sewing machines and we were a pretty big class. If we get some more sewing machines, I feel like, yeah, for sure, I would love to be a part of that.
Kyra Kustavish and Odaska Cody.
The grand finale was the strut to show off the ribbon skirts the girls created for ceremonies. Kelly Dybel is hopeful to do another fashion show next year. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Kitigan-Zibi, Quebec.
I'm pretty good at sewing, but those are some incredible designs. For most students, the end of the year is fast approaching and it's time to celebrate. The Winnipeg School Division held its third annual powwow. On previous powwows the last 2 years, so thousands of students, staff, and community members were eager to join in this year. The festivities included a grand entry, drum groups dancing, teaching sessions from elders, and an honor song for Winnipeg School Division graduates. The Ivan Flett Memorial Dancers also put on a jigging show. The school division's Director of Indigenous Education says the powwow is part of reconciliation.
This is the action part of reconciliation for our division. This is getting together, understanding, listening to elders. We have, there'll be over 2,000 students who will go through our learning tents with our elders to listen to them and their stories. This is really putting action and moving students forward on understanding reconciliation, and that's a big part of it.
And I was just checking before we came on, there are dozens of powwows returning this year just here in Manitoba. Good to see. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and never miss a story by downloading the APTN News app. You can also catch up on the week's news tomorrow on APTN National News Weekend. That airs at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.